You're listening to the Deep Purple Podcast, a fan podcast about one of the most legendary bands of all time, Deep Purple. We take a look at the music, history, and people behind the band Deep Purple and beyond. Welcome to the Deep Purple Podcast, the first and only podcast devoted to one of the greatest bands in rock history, Deep Purple. Today's episode is episode number 56, Ian Gillan Band, Clear Air Turbulence. And coming to you from the timeless, time-warped suburbs of Chicago, I'm your host, Nathan Beaudry.
And coming to you from somewhere in Rhode Island, John, Unprecedented Times Matola.
That is very true. We are recording this episode way out of order, way ahead of when it's actually going to come out. So the times may be even more unprecedented by the time this reaches the public.
I'm hearing a lot of phrases over and over again, and that's one of them. These are unprecedented times.
Well, you know, I'm not really one to buy into whatever kind of regurgitating sensationalism, but I have to say they are pretty unprecedented.
There's no other way to say it.
This is unlike anything I've ever experienced, and hopefully unlike anything I'll ever have to experience, or any of us will ever have to experience again. Pretty crazy stuff.
Yeah.
But I'm just kind of saying that we're the timeless because we're in a time warp. Like I said, we're recording this way in advance, mostly because we have our year-long extravaganza, which you've already heard. Hope you enjoyed it. We have some guest episodes which we're lining up, which you've already heard. Hope the guests were great. And some other kind of various things. So we were jumping way ahead to record this ahead of time, and this is a timeless episode. So there'll be no news. Anything that's popping up in the news Deep Purple related right now will be ancient. It's usually ancient normally, and will be very ancient by the time you get this. So. Just some quick things as we get started. Just want to remind everybody we're on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook, YouTube. Hopefully this episode, look below. Let's see if this episode gets banned. I did find a workaround on the last episode we recorded that got banned, and I've got it up. So basically, when it pops up on YouTube, I'll make my standard, hey, where's episode number, blah, 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 and I'll link to the other alternate site where it is being hosted with apparently no issues. The legality of that site, I don't know, but it's not my problem. That's their problem if it's deemed not acceptable. But hopefully you'll be able to check out episodes in the future. I'll start throwing them up on that alternate site. You can follow us there, or just stay on YouTube and follow the links when they come up. If you want to help support the show, 2 ways you can do it. Give us a 5-star rating and review on Apple Podcasts, and also please consider becoming a patron. For as little as $1 a month, you can help support the show, like these fantastic patrons that we have. At the $10 Super Champion tier, Steve Seaborg of NameOnAnything.com and AllTheWorldsAstage.net, and Ryan M. At the $5 tier, Clay Wambacher, Greg Sealby, Frank Teelgard Mortensen, and Mike Knowles. At the $3 tier, Peter Gardot, Ian DeRosier, Mark Roback, Anton Glaving, and at the $1 made-up name tier, Els Murders, Spacey Noodles, and the Ghoulish Leaky Mausoleum. Thank you very much for all of your support. If you don't like Patreon and you're like, I don't know, what is this new Patreon thing? Hey, PayPal's been around for like 20-something years. Sign up on PayPal, send us a one-time donation or a recurring donation similar to Patreon. Thanks to our brothers at the Deep Dive Podcast Network, Riot Sabbath Bloody Podcast, The Simple Man is Skinner Reconsidered, and Terry G-Bone Mathley at T-Bone's Prime Cuts, and of course, the one and only patron saint and archivist of the Deep Purple Podcast, Jorg Planer. Thank you so much for your support. Okay, so here we are today to discuss an album I have been talking about. Well, we've both been talking about, but probably me more.
You love this album.
Clear Air Turbulence, the second album by the Ian Gillan Band. And I am very, very excited about getting into this one. But as a little teaser before we get into this one, of course, as always, we do have a message from our sponsors. And in these troubled times, it's a little difficult. Everyone's doing stuff, learning, gym memberships, libraries. Everything's being done online in this crazy connected world we live in. So hopefully this next sponsor also has a way that you can virtually take advantage of their services.
Come and break out of the mold. Seek your share of wealth untold. Bask in the glow of solid gold at Bally's.
Right, Bally's. It's a gym, right? Yeah, it's a gym.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I haven't heard of Bally's in like forever.
Are they still a gym? Are they even around? Let's
I
look
don't
them
know.
up.
I remember there was like there was one around it, like the usual Rhode Island thing. It was just like, yeah, that's where the Bally's used to be. It was like now it's
Maybe
something
they don't even
else.
exist anymore. Everything's coming up as Bally's Las Vegas Hotel.
Ah,
There's one. Let's see. There's one by me here. Let me see. Bally's Las. No, that's Las Vegas.
yeah, I think that the after that popularity kind of went the way of like when like Netflix opened up and Blockbuster and all that went away. This is like all those
Yeah.
gyms like Workout World and everything were giving you like the $10 a month memberships and like Planet Fitness and stuff like that. So like Bally's and Golds and the place that made you pay like $50 a month or whatever. They were just like
Well, all I'm seeing is Bally Construction, Bally Foil Graphics, Bally Doyle, which is which I've been to. It's like an Irish pub, good, decent pub food and beer. Bally Technologies Incorporated. So yeah, I guess that well, they sent us a huge check to run that ad, so somehow they're still floating around. So thank you, Bally's. We'll forever celebrate your amazing fitness locations throughout the United States.
There it is, Bally Total Fitness.
Bally Total Fitness, yeah.
That's what it was called.
But
let me see. I love Wikipedia. Founded 1983, defunct October 2016.
Oh wow! So it's fairly recently. Maybe that's why I didn't notice.
Headquarters, Chicago, Illinois.
Oh wow! Look at that.
There you go.
Right down the street.
See, so there you go. So they they went bankrupt.
No, sorry.
Yeah,
Bally's.
well, I mean, it makes sense. I mean, it's just like I said, but I bet you if I read through this, like it'll be like with the rise of all the cheap membership, gyms.
Mm-hmm.
They were probably, not as hot as they used to be.
Maybe, yeah. The luster was gone from Bally's. Oh, well, sad stuff. Oh, hey, are you recording your audio?
I completely forgot.
That's okay.
Just remind me. All right, I'm starting it now.
Okay, that's fine.
All right.
I just usually you say something, so I was like, oh, I didn't know, but that's okay.
No, I didn't. See, this is why there's just more proof that I need you.
through the magic of technology, you've just noticed a huge improvement hopefully a huge improvement in John's audio quality.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, actually, it sounds pretty good right now, so it's not a big deal. That's why we have all these backups. If you did forget to record the whole episode, we'd still have it.
Well, to quote Grandpa Simpson, I'm a living joke.
All right, so we're here to talk about Clearer Turbulence. So not a ton of stuff about this album either. It's not definitely one of the most well-known. You can see my copy in the background there.
Love it.
Beautiful LP. And CD beside it. It's not one of the most well-known. The Ian Gillan band in general is kind of lost in the shuffle in favor of Gillan, which a lot of people tend to prefer. So basically, we last left them with Child in Time. We had the lineup of the band. The only lineup change here is that Mike Moran left, and they got Colin Towns on keys, who would be the only person that was the holdout from Ian Gillan band that would join him in Gillan. Everyone else kind of went their separate ways. So in the book Smoke on the Water, the Deep Purple story by Dave Thompson, Ray Fenwick looks back on Ian Gillan band. He says, the first album was very, very good, I thought. The thing with it was Ian suddenly found himself in a band with a bunch of session guys. And of course, session guys like to play as much as they can when they get a chance. In that situation, we were given a bit of room and rope, so we let the rope out a bit. And I couldn't find the quote, but I remember reading before that it was said that basically Ian Gillan in this band was not that he was not invested in it, but he was basically like, you guys do whatever you want to do. Like, just that he gave them a ton of creative freedom to
Mhm.
kind of play and do the things they wanted. And I think it shows on this album for sure.
Mm.
They mentioned in the book that like basically the punk scene was getting really huge right now in the UK, and Rainbow kind of took advantage of this by spending as much time as they could in the US and Japan touring. And Ian Gillan band spent a lot more time in the UK and therefore didn't quite get the same traction that Rainbow got. The press and the fans of Deep Purple were kind of hard on the Ian Gillan band because it is a big departure stylistically from Deep Purple. And of course, everyone's like, we just want you to, they just want Ian Gillan to rehash or put out more stuff that sounds exactly like Machine Head or whatever. And Ian Gillan was never about that. He wanted to try different things. Fenwick stated that in the book that fans are getting a little unhappy about the funky side of Gillan, and he says by the time of the second album, that terrible word jazz was coming in. But the worst thing we could have done was be another Deep Purple. We started to really experiment, and by the time we got to the third album, although we started doing shorter songs because we were thinking about radio play, we were also getting into some really strange stuff. So the band ends up settling down at Kingsway Studios, which are recorders, which was owned by Ian Gillan, the former Delane Lee Studios that Ian Gillan bought. So they had as much time as they needed. Gillan owned the studio, and they just took as much time as they needed to do it. They recorded the album twice. The first attempt, Gillan wasn't happy with, didn't like the way it was. Although I've heard both that they re-recorded it or that they just remixed it. So I'm not sure which one is true, but I've seen it in two different books listed different ways. So either way, at the least, they canceled their 1976 tour that was scheduled for late in the year and redid the album. And Scarabus actually only came out 6 months after that because they had spent all that late time just mixing, and then they jumped right to the next album. They toured in 1977 and released Live at the Budokan, which is really great hearing them do these songs live because some of them are tricky to pull off live. Gillan really wanted this album to set them apart from Deep Purple, and I think that was pretty successful. In Child in Time, Ian Gillan writes that they got a new manager. He got a new manager, Jerry Black, and he admits that he just signed the contract with him kind of blindly. Seems to always be a lot of that stuff going on. Gillan says that he was at Island Records, and they had signed people like Steve Winwood, so like Gillan and stuff like that kind of pushed back or like kind of considered second tier. But Gillan talks in his book about how he'd get to Island Records in the morning and he'd play pool with Bob Marley every day, which if I could have even a picture of that, I would be so happy. Never mind like video or audio of just Gillan and Bob Marley shooting pool. I mean, that would be how fly on the wall for those conversations. That would have had to have been incredible.
Yeah, pretty wild.
So he tells a story, this weird story in the band, in the book that I can't really make heads or tails of, but basically they're recording this album at Kingsway and the band's constantly running out. He says they're running out to get cigarettes, new strings for their guitars, booze, whatever it is, and they're just racking up taxi bills. So he was like, you know what, management, let's buy a car. We can save money. We'll just own the car. It'll stay at the studio. And he says he came and he saw the car parked in his spot at the studio, which he was kind of annoyed by. But he looked inside the car and there was nothing in it. Like no seats, no steering wheel, no dashboard, everything, just a complete empty shell. So I can't tell from that story if they just bought the car for him as like a joke, like at a scrapyard, or if they had bought a real car and just removed everything as a joke. But it sounds like this band was a little out of control with the jokes and everything. So who knows what it could have been. But I found that to be interesting. Just walk up and just a shell of a car sitting there. So for personnel on the album, of course, Johnny Gustafson is back on bass and vocals, Mark Nassif on drums and percussion, Ray Fenwick on guitar and vocals, and then Colin Towns taking over from Michael Moran. He, at this point, hadn't done much else. He had worked with George Moody, who I'm not really very familiar with. And I think that's his only pre-Ian Gillan band credit that I could find.
Mhm.
We've got a bunch of brass players, some really nice horns on this album. They were arranged by Cy Payne, who did like some big band stuff. On baritone sax, we got Martin Firth. Tenor sax, Phil Kenzie, who had worked with Manfred Mann, Wishbone Ash, Roger Daltrey, Rod Stewart, the Eagles. On trombone, we have Malcolm Griffiths, who worked with Slade and our friend Martin Ford on his album Smoovin', which is pretty cool. Also worked with George Michael. On trumpet, Derek Healy, who actually worked with Benny Goodman. So we can connect Benny Goodman to the Deep Purple family tree.
Wow. I
Think
didn't think
about it.
that was possible, right?
There's only 1 degree between, or 2 degrees, I guess, between Deep Purple and Benny Goodman. You got Deep Purple, Ian Gillan Band, Benny Goodman. It's the unbelievable. And then on trumpet, John Huckridge, who played with the Charlie Watts Orchestra. Got some great engineers. Bob Brogia, who I may be pronouncing right or wrong. He did some engineer work on Wizards Convention. He worked for Cullen Towns, Bernie Tormé, and Gillan. Chaz Watkins, who did the Gillan album and worked with Bernie Tormé. Brad Davis, who worked with Robert Fripp. John Prine, who after as recording of this was just in really bad shape from the virus. So hope he's okay. A really legendary songwriter. And Stan Clark. I forget the name of that album. It's got all the different faces on it, but I had that album. It's just incredible. Stan Clark. It's like a jazz fusion album. Louis Austin is an engineer, worked with Straps, Michael Schenkar, Hardin and York, Earl Jordan, Deep Purple, Fireball, so the Fireball album. And then it was mastered by Bilbo, and I don't think it's Bilbo Baggins, but apparently it's an alter ego for Dennis Blackham at Sky Mastering, who has got like almost 2,000 entries on Discogs. So this is somebody who's doing quite a bit of stuff. Then, of course, we've got the album art. So here it is, the album cover. That's actually, I couldn't find great photos on Google Image Search, so I just grabbed my LP back there the other day and took some photos of it. That's the album cover. What do you think about this album cover?
I like it. I don't like, I never understood the bumblebee thing,
Yeah.
like the color scheme, but it's like, I don't know. I just always thought it was cool just because it's like, regardless if it makes sense or not, it's really kind of striking, you know. It's like it's different, it's kind of weird, like Ian Gillan.
Yeah.
You know, it's just not like the norm. Ian
No,
Gillan he just kind of always did his own thing, and this kind of is that.
It always jumped out at me, the album cover. I remember the first time seeing it, I was in your room at your parents' house. You whipped out this album, and I saw that album cover, and I was just instantly like, I love this album. Like, I had never heard of it. I wasn't familiar with anything Ian Gillan had done post Deep Purple. And I just remember it was love at first sight with this album cover. I was like, that is the coolest. And I think maybe it's just because I grew up reading a lot of science fiction books, and I'll get into that in a little bit, but it reminded me of the cover of a really cool science fiction book where you see the cover of the book and you're like, oh, this looks this awesome scene of like spaceships. This is going to be awesome. And then, 50% of the time you're supremely disappointed. But it just evoked so much like wonder and possibility of what could possibly be in this album by looking at that cover. And you've got this, like you said, this bumblebee yellow and black ship, which is in stark contrast to this cloudy background that it's on. You've got Ian Gillan Band, an alternating yellow and black checkered board almost pattern, says Ian Gillan Band. And the ship is really cool. It's got, for some reason, kind of Stars of David throughout the ship, like on the fin and on the side of the ship. I don't know. And on the tail of it, I don't know what that really means, but it's got like some sort of identifier, a 2D-190 or something, which is kind of like, like you'd see on an airplane. But it's just like a very realistic feeling. Like if we were living in that kind of in the future, like that's what the ship would look like. And it kind of conjured with me just like, this is like a futuristic Deep Purple, or like it felt, even though the album when I first saw it was, I don't know, 15 years old or whatever, it just seemed so futuristic to me. And listening to it too, I felt the same way, like, wow, it's so futuristic. And maybe if you've been listening to uh you know all the bands we had been listening to of the early 70s, when you hear this, your just mind's kind of blown at how futuristic it looks. Then it says clear turbulence and a nice scrolling font on the bottom, and then that little F. I never understood, like, why is that little F over the U in turbulence? And that F is kind of the little signature of Chris Foss, who did the painting on this album.
Oh, okay.
And apparently I didn't know this until I was just looking it up for the show, but absolutely huge artist. And he had done a ton of science fiction book covers, working with for like Isaac Asimov, Philip K. Dick, Frank Herbert's Dune, Arthur C. Clarke. So that must have been that kind of subliminal trigger in me, as I was seeing this style that I had seen, and I had read these books with covers by the same artist. I just never drew the connection until the other day when I was looking it up. In another interesting thing about Chris Foss, he did all, you remember, it's weird, but you remember the book, The Joy of Sex?
Yeah.
He did all the artwork for that book, like the line drawings and stuff in that book, which is like strange, because then he's basically ever since been doing kind of these futuristic science-y sort of science fiction-y, I should say, sort of books. But I remember my, in behind my house, there was that big barn that we would hang out in. My uncle lived there. Hope he's not listening. But he, somewhere in his stuff one day, we found stashed that book, The Joy of Sex. So we were looking through it and we're like, oh my God, just looking at all the illustrations, like, pretty graphic illustrations, but probably, and I guess the way that they did that book was they photographed people actually having sex. But I think they probably felt like at the time, and whatever, the early 70s or whenever that came out, late 60s, I don't know. Maybe it was probably a little too risque, even though that book is not intended to be like pornographic. It's kind of like more just like celebrating the joy of sex or whatever. But they probably just were like, well, we can't just put these photos in here or we'll get banned. So they hired him to just basically draw the photos that he saw and include them as drawings. So it seemed a little more, I don't know, artistic or educational rather than just whatever, sleazy.
Yeah, were they like were the photographs supposed to be like instructional in nature, like kind of like the Kama Sutra?
Yeah, it was kind of like, if I remember correctly, it was just kind of like I mean, they were graphic pictures of people having sex, but they were like drawings. Yeah, and it was supposed to be kind of like celebrating sex, and like it was sort of instructional in some ways and giving people ideas or whatever. But I remember finding that book, and we were reading through it as young teenagers and just kind of giggling, like Beavis and Butthead style.
Oh boy.
But of course, that was, this was many years ago when you couldn't find anything you wanted instantly in a Google search, so that finding a book like that was just like unheard of. But so that's the front cover of the album. The back cover is actually really cool. So it's a continuation of the picture. You've got these beautiful like mushroom clouds billowing out of the regular clouds. Then you've got, in the same kind of checkerboard format as the band name, you've got the listing of the songs, and you got a little sun out there in the background. On the inside, it's a gray. I mean, it's really kind of cool. And I hadn't, until I got the record, I had never seen this, because on the CD they had kind of like a really tight close up of one of those clouds, and I don't think I ever really recognized what it was until I got the LP. On the inside, you've got the gatefold, you've got Gillan in the front with Fenwick, Gustafson,
Wow,
Towns.
it's like classic Gillan right there. It looks like that could have been from like a Deep Purple photo shoot.
Yeah, totally. He'd kind of gotten his longer hair back at that point.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, after seeing like the pictures of him, like with the short hair, where he looked like just this regular mook. It was just like, he looks like classic-y, and you like that. You like, if you told me that picture was from like Machine Head era or something, I would have been like, oh yeah, like wouldn't have known that he like cut his hair to look like a regular guy or whatever for a year or two. But yeah, it's a cool bunch of pics. These guys look rocking.
Yep. Then you've got the other side, just kind of a listing of the lyrics, as well as the credits that we've already reviewed. And then if you do the whole gatefold open from the back, you can see this is the front cover and back cover is one continuous, like a lot of other albums we've seen, like Fireball and drawing a blank on some of the other what is that? Sufficiently Breathless.
Captain Beyond.
Yeah, so it's kind of this one continuous picture.
That's actually really cool as like a whole, like painting or piece of art or whatever. It's pretty cool seeing it like that. It's flying into those or toward those kind of mushroom clouds.
Yeah, and it makes you wonder: are these mushroom clouds from some sort of nuclear war? Is this ship fleeing to escape, or what's going on? But it's awesome. I mean, if I had to rank this album cover, it'd get a easy 5 from me, right up there with like the likes of like Rising. It's not as iconic, only because this album didn't ever achieve that same level as some of those other albums did. But to me, from a pure artistic standpoint, for me, my style, I love it. And they do sell, Chris Foss has a website, chrisfossart.com, and he sells prints, and that might be on my birthday or Christmas wish list, is getting a really nice print of this album cover. I'd love to have this art. And there's the gatefold laid out, and there's one of the prints of the full album art without the Ian Gillan band stuff all over it. So really cool.
Nice.
So yeah, love that album cover. All right, and then he says on the back of the album, many thanks for the enthusiasm, support, and professional services. Jerry Black, who is his new manager, Gary Lee, Byron Orm, Easy Hire, Maurice Plackett, and Percussion Services. So, okay, that's it. So we've got on this album 6 tracks, much like Rising, right? 6 tracks.
Yeah.
Or 9 if you ask Ritchie. So 6 tracks, 3 per side, starting with side 1, obviously, and the title track, Clear Air Turbulence. Should we dive into it?
Yeah.
All right, and these are rips directly from my CD in the background there. As we'll get into later, there's multiple versions of this album as far as mixing goes, but I went with the kind of the original because this is what I'm used to. And here we go. Clear Air Turbulence. It starts off, the little slow fade in here. The spaceship sounds. You can hear like a little organ in the background. Kind of sounds like it's taking a similar.
That was a tight opening.
So tight. Listen to that bass.
Yeah, it's always been one of my favorite parts.
It's such a good bass line. So this is, I was going to say, it kind of sounded like it was carrying on from where they left off on the Child in Time album, but then they hit you in the face with this and everything's out the window at that point. Oh, horns are so good on this.
You're like, oh. I like it too, but you love this. You love it more.
This album's always spoken to me. I don't know what to say.
Good vocals by Ian.
Yeah, he's not holding back on this album at all.
Yeah. Like, lets out a little scream there. He does a little kind of like growling type vocals, like sounds great.
So he's kind of keeping. You can see where they might have gotten the idea for this album cover. He's talking about astral explorers and stuff. Song's taking you on a ride.
The bass is basically the main instrument in this song.
Well, that's great, and Johnny Gustafson never got enough credit as a singer or bass player, and his bass playing is so on point on this album. So I've talked about my job cleaning a church before and the albums I'd listened to, and this was one of them. And I remember I always thought the line was "Get into Duluth." Get into Duluth, get into Duluth. So that for years I was singing that, and I was like, that's crazy. So I looked it up, and you know what he actually says?
What?
Get into Duluth. I was right. It doesn't make any sense, but he says it. I'm usually not right in those scenarios, but here comes Fenwick's great playing here.
What I like about this song so far is that everything sounds really tight, because I feel like it's it's really close mic'd, or there's like a lot of compression on it, or it's just like,
yeah,
I don't know, whatever
Fenwick's
it is.
guitar doesn't have a ton of sustain. It's very like staccato kind of playing, but yeah, it's right in your face though.
Yeah, that's how everything sounds in this. Like, it doesn't sound loose.
Yeah, it sounds like your ear is about 2 feet away from the ride cymbal.
Almost a really Ritchie-like quality in this solo.
Yeah, it's like a jazzier version of Ritchie.
Yeah. Like if Ray Fenwick wasn't playing this, then Ritchie could have been playing this.
It's got the feel of like a Ritchie Blackmore live solo. It's very unrehearsed and unwritten, and that's what kind of gives it a good energy, I think.
I love how the horns come in at the end here. That's how you know the solo's wrapping up.
The horns are like, come on, play them out. Get out of here, Ray. I like, what did it say on like the chart for this song? It's like, okay, Ray Fenwick solo for 82 bars or whatever.
Like how the horn section is doubling his vocals.
And it's like harmonizing with them at the same time. This is not matching them note for note.
And then they just go back to this. It's crazy.
I love the arrangement on this song.
Yeah, that's the other thing, is that the arrangement is so good.
Ancient bells are ringing. There's like a lot of really great, conjures a lot of really great images, all the lyrics in the song too. Listen to that cowbell work.
I would have missed it if you didn't point it out.
He's doing what he did on the ride cymbal, but he's hitting it on the cowbell this time. It's so good. This build at the end here is just incredible. Wow.
Boom.
Very
Drop
tight,
the mic.
tight ending. I think that the CD must have left part of that note on the next track because it just ended a little too abruptly almost. But but what a way to build at the end there. It starts off just with that simple riff, and then the bass really starts kicking in, that he's going on the cowbell, the horns start building a little bit more, and it just ends everything in unison like that. Man, so tight. What a great album opener. So this album, and the Ian Gillan Band in general, like I said, gets a bad rap, and I've heard every adjective under the sun, from ridiculous to preposterous and silly and every other thing or disastrous about this band. And I've just never gotten it. I don't understand. I know I'm in the minority. Like I'm used to being that way with other albums, but I don't understand the hatred for this. Maybe hatred's too strong a word, but I don't understand how easily this album and this band gets written off when they put out material like that.
Oh, I'm with you on it.
And that song to me, and I never thought about this until just the other day when I was listening to the Rockfield Mixes version of this. To me, it's almost like the same kind of feeling as Paul McCartney's Band on the Run, the song Band on the Run, not the album, where it's just like this song that starts up and you think it's going one place and it goes all these different places and then kind of comes back to the beginning. Song obviously sounds nothing like it, but it's in the way that it's like, wow, it was kind of ballsy for Paul McCartney to come out of nowhere with that song. And it's even crazier that song was as big a hit as it was. And then it's similar with this, with, less radio results, but for Ian Gillan to come out with this song and just be like, boom, I'm putting out an album, this is the first song, freaking deal with it. It's great.
Yeah.
All right, so what do you think about Clear Air Turbulence?
Well, this is definitely actually I haven't listened to this album in a while, so this will be interesting. But yeah, this one was like really good. I forgot how good the solo section was and everything. I love the horns, I love the production. 4.5 for me.
All right. Well, it's probably no surprise I'm giving this one a 5.
Big surprise.
Yeah, big surprise. Will it be
I knew.
Will it be the last 5? I don't know.
I mean, when you hear noises like when somebody's playing, it's a 5.
Yeah, exactly.
If you go back to the Rainbow Rising episode, you probably heard me. I probably did that like all through the episode.
Yeah, you're like, I think you even said it at the beginning, like nothing on this album is getting less than a 4. I don't ever really think about the ratings before we go into this, but I was definitely like, there's certain songs I was less like, Clear Turbulence. There's no way that's getting anything less than a 5 from me. But yeah,
but there were definitely those albums where it's like, I wouldn't say you think about the ratings, but you just kind of know, like, all right, logically, like if you love every song, then you know that you're gonna give high ratings. You don't know what at the moment, but
right. And it's interesting because that when I first heard this song and that, and after hearing that weird spacey intro, I remember hearing it. And my memory is listening to it in your room at your parents' house, like maybe like, I don't know if it was the CD or the cassette or what, but I remember just like hearing it and then looking at that album cover while we were listening to it and just being like, oh my God, this is crazy. And that kind of futuristic sound and feel of the album just really jumped out at me. And the visual of the cover really kind of, it almost kind of probably persuades you into thinking that, just because you're looking at that cover first and then you hear this music and you kind of make that connection. And then, the rest of the album doesn't necessarily follow this. Well, Moneylender is probably the closest song to Clear Air Turbulence as far as style goes, but it kind of does jump all over the map with the rest of the songs. So speaking of which, we should probably kick to the next one, which is they're going to bring down the house a little bit after wearing out poor Mark Nossif on the drums, and John Gustafsson, man, he must have been, that's some fast bass playing. But they're going to go into it with the next track, 5 Moons. Little pan flutes going. This part always made me think of like Karate Kid because it sounds.
I was just
Yeah.
gonna say that, Mr. Miyagi.
It sounds like it, and you know, when I first heard this, it was probably around that time, so I was a Karate Kid on the mind.
But it is really, really nice intro.
Yeah, this is a very, very beautiful song. You get the kind of electric piano there. I don't know if it's a Rhodes or whatever, but.
Going through another change. Bright yellow skies, looking so strange.
You don't hear Gillan singing this register that often, that soft register.
A million souls alone with 5 moons in the sky.
That was kind of a weird choice for him to kind of sing it like this.
Yeah.
We can have another chance.
It's interesting too with the lyrics. So at the end of Clear a Turbulence song, he says, "A million souls helplessly returning," and then in this song he says, "A million souls alone with 5 moons in the sky." So it's like he's continuing that story.
Hmm.
And I kind of like that when it's like all tied together. It's their story, but you just don't really quite understand what it is. But it's an interesting. It's like, is this the aftermath of them escaping in that ship, and now they're thinking about, and there's 5 moons? That sounds always sci-fi to me. Like, ooh, there's 5 moons on this weird alien planet.
We've gone away. We've gone away. We're going to
And he's also kind of got this unusual effect on his voice, which kind of,
And yeah, he
Makes it
usually
sound very
doesn't do too much with effects.
yeah, this metallic-y, like, I don't know, this weird.
Yeah, it's like I think it's like a one of those
Electro-
really like a delay, but like very, very tight delay.
Yeah, but it's kind of this like buzzy, like kind of electronic sound,
Hmm.
which I'm not really loving it.
Not loving the.
And we can only see 4 moons in the sky.
So just imagine me vacuuming in a church late at night, thinking. So he says 4. I remember I don't listen to the lyrics that much usually. So by this point he says 4 moons in the sky, and I'm like, wait a second, weren't there 5 before? What's happening to these moons?
They're disappearing.
Like, who is stealing these moons or blowing them up? Like, what's going on? I mean, this is such a cool, like, laid-back little groove here.
And this is a really kind of Stormbringer type solo.
I wonder if Ray Fenwick used a screwdriver to do it.
Like, no, this is really just coming to me. Like, I'm really hearing
Yeah.
kind of like Ritchie,
Like a holy
influence
man sort of
solos.
situation.
Yeah, which is kind of cool.
I think this is. I love Ray Fenwick. Everything I've ever heard by him, I've got almost everything he's ever played on, and this
he's
to
good.
me is one of his greatest moments. Is this album?
Oh, that bass has some wild effects on it too.
It's got like a nice punch to it.
Oh, I forgot about that.
The sax solo.
Yeah.
This sax solo is oh, where is it? Sax solo is by Phil Kenzie, who we mentioned earlier. But it's really cool to, you know, like start off so strong and then really bring it down to this really mellow tune. That's kind of got this environmental edge to it, talking about cutting down the trees and putting out smoke. Only 3 moons now.
They're going away.
Whoever's stealing all these moons is getting away with murder as far as I'm concerned. So it opens up with, I don't lie to my people, I don't pray for their sins, like he's some sort of leader. Now he's like, I don't lie to my lady, I don't lie to my woman, like he's like more of a lover than a leader. Gray mothers of a broken child.
You skipped a moon.
That's what yeah, that's what I don't, that's always baffled me. He goes from 5 to 4 to 3 to 1. Like, so it's like that's what I've always just wondered is, are the moons being stolen? Are they being blown up? What's happening to them? But all I know is, or maybe they're just setting over the horizon of this alien planet. But he got 2 in 1 shot at that last round. Maybe he figured, well, this song's already 7.5 minutes long. I can't throw an additional verse that ends with, you know, 1 less moon.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's hard to know what the thinking was there with old Ian. All right, 5 moons.
Well, it's not getting 5 points.
It's not getting 5 points.
No. That being said, though, I mean, I really like the music, but unfortunately, in this song, I really don't like the vocals, which kind of sucks because, you know, it's the Ian Gillan band, you know. I mean,
there's not many songs where you don't like his vocals. It's maybe this and Place in Line.
Ugh.
Sorry to sully this episode by bringing that up.
No, but I just don't know. I don't really a big fan of like the effect that was on his vocals or the way that he approached it, and even like the chorus part where they had all the people singing. Like it didn't do it for me. Like I thought it, you know, if the vocals were like different, then like I think it would have been better. But the music was a redeeming quality for it. There was a, you know, really good music. So I say like 3.5 for me.
All right. Solid. I'm going to give it a 4. I like this track. But yeah, it's a little bit more mellow, a little bit less kind of crazy than some of the other tracks.
Which I like mellow, but I mean, you know, I like mellow. But the production is still good and like the music and everything, but like I said, just the vocals I feel were just all wrong.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah.
All right. Next track. This is going to conclude the second side of the album, and we're starting off, you know, we're going from the rock and clear Turbulence to the mellow 5 moons, and now we're into Money Lender.
Yeah. He was getting into a lot of that growling type of like.
He's doing a lot of growling and then a lot of screaming a little later in this track.
Yep, here we go. Oh, yes.
That little riff before they go into the chorus too is very Purple. Like they would throw in a riff like that to transition.
When I was younger, I was always wondering if this song was like kind of like an inspiration he got from like the from Jesus Christ Superstar.
I always thought the same thing, like the temple and the moneylenders.
Yeah. Just the connection there was like, you know, how could you not think that?
I like the first one. He goes, "Money, you got it, hot dog." Classic Mark Nosey with all that busy percussion going on.
I love how the horn section just like accents like the certain parts of the songs on this album. They're used to like really great effect.
And the horns on this whole album are great. I mean, it's only on a few songs, but they're great where they're there.
It's a great riff too. It's really simple. Oh. Ah, this is great. Love that little jazzy electric piano in the background. That
and that funky little guitar.
Oh yeah, the guitar is great. It's really clean. Like the doubling and the low vocals there.
Can you feel the danger?
You dirty dog.
Yeah.
Oh, flute solo from out of nowhere.
Hey man, it works.
No complaints from me.
I actually used to think like, damn, that was a rockin' flute solo, which nobody has ever said.
Well, it's funny because it's not rockin'. It's like, oh, this is a great part too, but it's kind of like really laid back and jazzy over this crazy frenetic beat that's going on. The lyrics are just cracking me up.
Oh my goodness.
Wow.
Yeah,
That's
great
how you end a
stuff.
song and an album side right there.
Heck
But
yeah.
I can't get enough of these lyrics though. They're just like they're so weird. Like money you got it, hot dog is funny, but you know, like a turning like a stag trying to survive. How do you know if I'm dead or alive? And then he goes into all this stuff, and then, hey, money lender, I ain't gonna surrender. Hey, people arranger, can you feel the danger? What's a people arranger? Like, what does that even mean?
Did in the one of the end lyrics, did he say money money lender, you have one black suspender?
he says, hey, money lender, you're a ticket vendor. One black suspender for a hot dog.
What the hell is he talking about?
Only Ian Gillan could sing that in such a way that you're like, oh yeah, this is awesome. There aren't many singers who could sing that line and just get away with it.
Well, yeah, I mean, he's got that. He's got a friggin' the flute solo, and like, what else do you want? He can do he's just throwing the kitchen sink in here, man.
Yeah, he's got the part two where he says, money, it's evil, hand it over. And then he starts laughing. Like he's losing his mind during the song. And I've never been so happy.
Yeah.
It's so good. Oh man. So
well, another great thing about this song too is that like you know, a lot of times now you'll get like a vocalist would, you know, record like that perfect take for like a chorus or something, and then they just cut and paste it. But it's like this one, you can hear that he kind of just did what he was feeling, like when he was just when he was doing like the into the chorus, he was doing wow, you know, and he was just like, sometimes he'd scream, and then there was one where he went woo, you know. He just decided like, you know what, I'm just gonna go woo for one of them instead of.
Yeah, and he probably did it different every single take that he did of the song, and every time he did the chorus, he probably did it different, and that's just what ended up on the recording. And it does have so much.
That's what gives
it
like,
so much character.
I was gonna say, yeah, that's what gives like songs from this era character, and like what he did on this a lot more than if it were, say, recorded now in 2020. Then yeah, it might have been a little different, but
and he says
either way,
in the Complete Deep Purple, Gillan references this song, and I think he mentions it in his biography too, that this was about his former manager Bill Reed. He says basically that he got a tax bill for £385,000 and was basically looking for someone to blame, and so he wrote this song about like, how damn you taking all my money. But then he says later, he says, in truth, I had not a single reason to think badly of the man. It wasn't necessarily his fault, but I think he was just, you know, I can only imagine if I got a tax bill for that much money, how pissed I'd be. All right, Money Lender, what do you think?
4.5.
All right,
strong.
I'm hitting it with another 5. 5 moons. I only got 4 moons for 5 moons, but I got 5 moons for. Yeah, we can rank this one in moons, right?
Yeah, 4.5 moons for me. 5 moons
for Money Lender
in the sky,
or on our spreadsheet, wherever you want them. Okay, so with that, we flip over to side 2 of this album, which kicks off with the song Over the Hill. Traditional Mark Nazi roto-tom action. Interesting effect on Johnny Gustafson's bass there. talking about the Messiah, the famous preacher. A lot of Jesus themes in this one so far.
You know, it's funny because it's like there's this really like polished sounding like music and everything, and Gillan's vocals are really raw.
Very, yeah.
In this song, it's a real contrast.
And very dry, not a lot of effect on them.
Yeah. It almost has like a really in rock type of effect on his vocals, like you know what I mean, like not the effect, but it's that's where it sounds like he's coming from, like his performance.
Yep. He's got like a weird like phaser or flanger going back and forth on his voice right now.
So much for dry vocals.
Yeah. Sounds similar to the Five Moons effect, but sung differently. I love how he sings so high and then he hits an even higher note than that after.
Ugh, unbelievable.
So good.
Oh, he swore.
Yeah. He doesn't give a shit for your smile. This is such a cool breakdown. This is kind of one of those moments I always think about, this little instrumental interlude when I think of this album. Kind of hearing regular piano for the first time.
I forgot about that.
It's like an almost silly sounding synth patch, but it works so well. It turns into this like Bollywood style dance number here. This part's crazy.
Oh, I remember this.
Now, most people, this is one of those situations where I'm like, I totally get it if this is not your cup of tea. Because this is just kind of out there. But how can you not respect them for just taking these chances?
This is so out there.
But then listen to this. Almost turns into like a disco song just from out of nowhere. And they take you on these journeys just enough so you totally forget what the song even was, and then when they bring it back, you're like, oh yeah, we're still that song? Like if you didn't have the track list in front of you, you just assume they'd moved on to some different song.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like, oh, we must be in Good Hand Liza by now. Fenwick's just doing all that octave work on the. You're like, oh, we're still doing this song.
We're still doing this?
I think even Ray Fenwick had forgotten by this point. It looked like he was in the middle of his solo. What a ride that song is.
Oof. Yeah, I feel like I was on top of that bumblebee spaceship.
I feel like I need a nap after listening to that song.
Oh, yeah.
What a way to open a side. Let's keep people guessing. All right, Over the Hill.
Oof. Well, again, definitely like I enjoy the production and the musicianship. It's like it's definitely all there, and I like Gillan's vocals on this, and I like the arrangement too. Definitely, like you said, it took us on a wild ride. We were like, I'm exhausted. Yeah, I'm still you know me, I'm stingy with my rating, so I give it a 3.5. Only because it's just like it's a little too much for me.
Yeah.
Like it's not one that I would go back and like be like skip to this track like I can't wait to listen to Over the Hill.
Yeah. It's one of those ones with me where like I don't, listening to this on a cassette, like on headphones so many times, so many years ago, like I didn't even ever, this song always just kind of sticks out to me, like, or is like, I don't really remember what that song is. The second I hear it, I'm like, oh, of course. And forget like all those little musical things. Like, I think the defining moment almost of the album for me is that little musical interlude in the middle of the song. And like I said, they go into this like legit, like I'm not saying it to be funny, but it's like you could see this Bollywood, if you've ever watched a Bollywood movie, they just break into this weird, like they all get up in line and do this crazy dance, like in the middle of a scene, just like, in the 50s, that would happen more in American movies. And they break out into one of those and it's just so unexpected. It doesn't last very long. It only lasts for a few bars, but it's stuff like that and Gillan just mixing up the lyrics and throwing little ad-lib stuff in there that gives this album so much character. Struggling with this one a little bit. I don't know what to give it, but I think I'm going to give it a 4. I really dig it. Like I dig everything on the album, and every song on this album just, to me, just gels together and serves its purpose. So as a side opener, I think it's everything on this album is just really interesting to me, and that's another one of them. All right, only got 2 tracks left. The second one, where they get the middle one, is it going to throw us as much of a curveball as 5 Moons did? We'll have to wait and find out from our friend Good Hand Liza. Mark Nosey on the bongos or something.
See, that's the other thing about these songs is like when you're saying the names of them too, it's just like, I mean, obviously I've been listening to this album for years, but I can't remember like what the song is.
Right.
Because they're so out there,
Nobody wants to help me. Nobody wants to help me. I see you turn your eyes away. I live in gutters. I live in alleys. I live in your house. I am a bad reflection. I am a bad reflection. I am your secret shadow.
This one lyrically is very odd.
The woman Liza, this woman
Oh, she gives good hand.
Good hand. But good hand is all one word, which is odd.
She take me to religion. She take me to religion. She take me to religion.
I always
What?
this would always crack me up because it's like she gave me good hand, and then he just starts saying she take me to religion. I was like, that must have been some really good hand. And then she says she make me boy man.
Yeah, but we've already established that we don't know what the hell he's talking about on half this album.
Hallelujah. She saves my soul from heaven. She gives salvation. I mean, wow. Liza must be quite a lady.
I work for good hand Liza. She is my soul provider. I feel so good beside her.
Going on a nice little musical journey right here. A lot of the synth work that Colin Towns does on this does evoke that airy sort of floating through the breeze sort of feeling.
Yeah. I mean, the other thing too about this album is like, no matter the song, it's definitely like all a cohesive group of songs. Like, even though they're all kind of like, you know, unusual and unique and everything, it's like the production and the performance and everything are very like cohesive. Like, it's all got the same, so like, you know, you're listening to the Ian Gillan band Cleary or Turbulence album.
Yeah.
Which I think is a good thing, you know. It's a very powerful thing, you know. Very cohesive, good thing for an album to have, you know. It makes it really defining.
And it stands out even amongst the other two Ian Gillan band albums as being a little different.
Yeah, definitely. I think wasn't this one like that, just different enough to have them kind of go in less of a direction than this?
This is bass. Yeah, I think with Scarabus they decided to be a little bit more rock and have a little shorter songs. Try to shoot for some radio play, but I don't think radio play was ever a possibility for this band. And I think that's what I like about it. They weren't trying to be poppy or whatever or get radio hits. They were just doing some cool stuff that they came up with.
Right.
It's like I think it's vocals doing that, just kind of like breathing weirdly into the vocals.
Wow.
All right, that's Good Hand Liza.
Yes, it is. Yes, it was.
She take me to religion. She make my boy man.
Whatever the hell that all means.
Yeah, I mean, you just got it with a word like good. She gives good hand. She gives me good hand. You have to. I mean, obviously, it's hard to keep your mind out of the gutter with lyrics like that. He even says it. I live in gutters. I live in alleys. I live in your house. I don't know what any of it means. I don't know what you're talking about, Ian. But all right, what do you think of Good Hand Liza?
I'm gonna give it a 3. 3 moons. Yeah, I mean, I was talking about all that stuff, giving the, I think overall, like the album and the performance praise for how it sounded so consistent, but
Mhm.
that song to me was kind of like, I guess, forgettable.
Yeah.
And that, like, actually we just finished listening to it and I don't really even remember it.
It's
So it
it's a hard one. It,
literally,
it doesn't really have a hook to it at any point. There's not even really
right.
there's
It
no
was hard for me to
chorus.
follow.
There's just kind of like
Yeah.
walk through this, and then it's kind of it's unusual in the album in that it doesn't bring you back to the beginning. It does this instrumental interlude, which it sounds like an interlude, but then it just ends. So
Right.
it doesn't have the same structure as some of the other songs might have.
Yeah, and that's where it kind of lost me, I think.
Yeah, I'm gonna agree. I'm gonna also give it a 3. I think it's the weakest song on the album. Um, it's kind of fun. It bebops around a little bit, but it ultimately doesn't really go anywhere. As much as I love it and love this album. All right, the final track is none other than Angel Mancheno, or as Spotify calls it, Angelo Mancheno.
When you sent me that, I was dying.
I know.
Like,
I was. Yeah, so I the reason I put it up is because somebody had asked me to do one of the little quick things I was posting on Twitter, like quick videos of calling them quarantine quickies. And somebody said, how would you, I'm thinking about the Rockfield mixes. So what would you say are the differences? And I hadn't heard it in a while. So I popped on the Rockfield mixes on Spotify, and I didn't notice at first. And I just looked down at my phone. It said Angelo Mancheno. I just couldn't stop laughing. Cause I mean, obviously whoever programmed it in there just probably put a typo or didn't know. I mean, Angel Mancheno is a weird name for a song. So it's an easy mistake, but just for some reason, it really tickled me. We have talked about this song before, way back, I believe, on episode 6, in our episode 6 episode. And Angel Mancheno was the name of a guy that was friends with Ian Gillan when I believe when they were in Israel. I didn't look this up, but I remember reading about it. I think it's in his book. But we talked about it on that episode. Basically, he's friends with this guy. It sounds like a scene from a movie. It doesn't sound real, but the story, as Ian tells it, is he's friends with this guy, Angel Mancheno, and I believe it was in Israel. They basically, there was some sort of misunderstanding. They're on this cliff side. It sounds very epic. There was some sort of misunderstanding where the Angel thought that Ian was sleeping with his girlfriend or his wife or whatever. So he pulls out the knife on Ian, and he's going to kill Ian Gillan. And Gillan's, this is in episode 6 days before even Deep Purple. So Gillan is like, no, it didn't happen. I was like, Shaggy, it wasn't me. I actually watched that video with my kids today because my son was like saying he didn't do something. I'm like, you're a worse liar than Shaggy. And so I started playing the It Wasn't Me video and then realized it's super inappropriate. So I found a more a live performance where they change up the words a little bit and played it for them, and they're still kind of confused about it. But it's such a great. Have you seen that video?
Not in ages.
It's so great because Shaggy's like sitting there like the Godfather, and this guy comes to him basically for advice. He's like, Shaggy, I was messing around with my neighbor on the bathroom floor, and my girlfriend walked in. Like, what do I do? And Shaggy's like, just say it wasn't you. It's so simple. Like, you didn't even think of it. So then they go into the video and
say it wasn't you. No, that's advice that you can't buy.
It's like I imagine what that conversation looked like when he came back to his girlfriend like the next day or whatever. Hey, listen, I've been thinking about what happened. It wasn't me. Oh, okay, well that's all cleared up. So anyway, that's a huge diversion. But so Gillan's on the cliffside with this this character. Ian's playing the part of Shaggy. He's like, I didn't do it. It didn't happen. And somehow, and it's unclear as to how this happened, Angel realizes he's made a huge mistake. So now Angel decides he's going to kill himself. So Ian has successfully talked him out of killing Ian, but now the guy wants to kill himself. So Ian's like, no, don't do that either. And now has to talk him out of murder, and now he's trying to talk him out of suicide. And at the end of it, Angel Mancheno is so grateful to Ian Gillan for talking him out of both of those things that he decides they are brothers forever. So they take he takes the knife that he had, and they both cut their palms and like shake hands and become blood brothers in this scenario. So amazing story. It's incredible to think that it actually happened. So it's very it just seems like something that would be in a movie or like in an epic piece of literature. But
It's
anyway,
actually an interesting story.
it's a great story, and you can see why it took him 10 years or so to write a song about it, but he did. And that song is what we're going to hear next, and that's Angel Mancheno. It starts with this kind of sleepy little dreamy sequence here. Hearing a little more Ritchie now that you mention it.
Mm-hmm.
When Ritchie plays acoustic. I was listening to him play something acoustic the other day that he posted, and he's got that style. Little flute part comes in there.
Here comes the pan flute.
Just regular flute this time.
I like saying pan flute. I don't know.
I can't fault you for that.
It's really cool. I like the way this beginning is building, this intro.
Yeah, they're kind of masters of that on this album, just having these slow, long builds. You get this little marching drum now comes in.
It's just this really like pleasant kind of layering of instruments and
synth patches. You got some strings playing in the background, flutes. This song always seems shorter to me than it actually is. It's quite a long song, but you've got over 2 minutes of intro here. Here we go. Just basically telling the story now. So according to the lyrics, he found her red hair, or he found a red hair on Gillan's bed. That's what he assumed.
That's really shoddy evidence. What's he doing around his bed anyway? I really like how the tempo change is really seamless in this song too.
Yeah.
It's like really well done, I think. A nice transition from like this to the chorus.
Pulses race as two become blood united brothers one. There you go. They're blood brothers now. Did you ever do blood brothers with somebody when you were a kid?
No.
Did it with my friend Damien who lived across the street. We tried to do it, but like we couldn't figure out how to cut ourselves, so we tried to get a cat to scratch us. We were just like pissed off a cat until the cat like scratched us. Didn't really get enough blood, but I don't know how effective it was.
Oh my god.
I just thought of that. I hadn't thought about that in years.
Oh. No, I never even did like Spit Brothers.
Oh, you spit in the pond? Oh, yeah, it's gross.
Yeah, I never did. I was always very like particular about like germs and cleanliness, so it's like that would have never appealed to me.
That's gross. And in these times, you don't even shake hands regularly, so I wonder if people are ever going to shake hands again, to be honest. I'd be fine if that tradition went away.
Yeah, honestly, that's fine by me. I don't like people being near me anyway.
You're like 6 feet isn't far enough.
Yeah, it's like when this whole pandemic is over, everybody can stay 6 feet away.
Yeah, at least.
if not more.
I wonder what kind of gear Colin Towns was using, because he gets some really cool sounds in this album. And that's the clear turbulence formula that they missed on the last song.
Yeah.
They come back, boom. I don't think anyone else gets any credits on this album, but it sure sounds like some of the other guys are doing backing vocals, not just Gillan.
Yeah. Yeah, it couldn't have just been him.
Oh, I know. Hear that acoustic guitar come in there.
Oh, it is. I've never heard that before.
I never noticed it either. The fidelity on my old Walkman probably wasn't that high. Sounds like a butterfly ball, kind of.
I was gonna say, that had a little butterfly ball feel at the end to it. Well, considering that like a lot of these musicians were on the butterfly ball.
Yeah, quite enough of them.
Right?
And that ends the album. Clear Turbulence. Angel Machenio. What say you about Angel Machenio?
Now I'm feeling, I think like you did like a song or two ago, trying to struggle with what to give it, because it was good. I liked it a lot. But again, I think like there was a middle part that kind of lost me. But
yeah, that of all the interludes on the album, that was kind of one of the, I don't want to say bad or strange. It was just kind of
maybe average or most forgettable, or
a little bit more forgettable than some of the others.
I'll give it a 3.5. Which, yeah.
I'm going to give it a 4. I could easily see myself going to a 4.5 if that interlude was a little bit more memorable. But the vocal parts and the songwriting of it and the lyrics, honestly, tells the story very well.
I like the story. Yeah,
I remember reading that story when we were preparing for our episode 6 episode, which was also episode 6. And I had never heard that story before, so I was like, oh my god, it's the story of Angel Machenio when we get to Clear Turbulence, which ends up being like a year later. Can't wait to talk about that. So it's it's an interesting story, very interesting story. Gladly it ended the way it did, with just a couple of guys cutting their hands and nobody dying. Always a plus in my book.
Always a plus.
So that is. Oh, you know what? I never.
No, you didn't.
I gotta edit this thing here. The spreadsheet's not ready for this album. All right, let's see what our totals come to when I drag this formula down.
Hey,
Okay,
there we go.
there we go.
There we go. So yeah, you were a lot higher on this one than me. I gave the overall album 3.75 and you were 4.17.
Mhm.
So 7.92 altogether. So clearly, your ratings brought it up quite a
Yeah,
bit.
boosted. Not quite as well, actually. Yeah, it's one of our higher variances, but not as high as like Who Do We Think We Are or anything.
So there's really no other album that like kind of comes
That's weird when you're
close to
doing
this
albums
one.
like this with that have so few songs on them. It just takes
Mhm.
one or two threes to really bring down the average.
Yeah. Which yeah, but I
But
mean,
obviously, I
if
also
you
gave it 2.5. So
yeah, so I mean, if you're rounding up to like maybe an 8 rating for an
Mhm.
album, which I mean it's pretty close to it. I mean, that would be like close to like the Dream Theater's version of Made in Japan.
Mhm.
Um or even the first Captain Beyond album.
Mhm.
Um and In Rock.
Yeah. Machine Head
So,
is well. Machine Head's a little higher.
yeah, that's why I'm staying away from anything. I'm just doing anything close to like an 8
Yeah.
rating. So yeah, I would say though that like usually I'm say that a rating like that makes sense, but I don't know. This album doesn't quite doesn't quite make sense to me when it
Yeah.
comes to rate the ratings in the other albums. I think it's really a different kind of album. But what I do like about it is, like I was saying before, that you definitely know that this is the Ian Gillan band. Yeah, it's a really consistent sounding album, and I mean, obviously the musicians are all great,
Mhm.
but there is like a lot of like really wacky shit on here.
Yeah. That sure is.
Which I think some of it works and some of it kind of doesn't.
Mhm.
Um, so take that for what it's worth. To me, it's like this has never been an album that I'd like put on and like want to rock out to, and just maybe listen to a couple of songs off
Well, if you ever have to
it.
vacuum a church late at night,
Absolutely.
I gotta say it's pretty freaky to be alone in a church like late at night. It's definitely would kind of freak me out sometimes. So blasting some, you know, blasting some music and listening to it was always kind of helped a little bit.
Yeah, it sounds friggin' terrifying.
Especially, actually, I don't know what was scarier, being in the sanctuary by yourself or being in the boiler room where like all the janitorial supplies were.
I think even creepier or even worse is if you were in there with a priest.
This is true.
Hi-yo.
It wasn't a Catholic church, so I was safe.
Ah.
Um,
Yeah, that's it. I went for the
the low
priest
hanging
humor.
fruit.
Yeah, these jokes are fresh from the bakery, folks. Come and get them right out of the oven. I'm serving up topical, baby.
Topical.
Oh, this is topical from
Now, sadly,
20 years ago.
Well, sadly, it still is topical.
Oh, yeah, but wasn't it like a whole breaking story like 20 years ago or something?
Yeah, it was.
Like when it became like a real like out in the limelight, like priests, they're molesters, and
yeah, it's not good.
no, I'll shut up now.
So there's not really a ton of reviews. Struggled a little bit with this one. Do have a few things. Jorg, of course, sent over some stuff. This great little advertisement for the album this is from an unknown source, he says. And we've got New Musical Express had an article, a few articles from Sounds, another ad in Melody Maker, which has got these little Ian Gillan band spaceships flying around with all the different dates. The London Rainbow Theatre on the 14th.
Oh, that's cool.
Going all the way through the 24th of May at Lees Cliff Hall. It's headbanging time again, kids. A little article by Tony Stewart. Probably not that Tony Stewart, from New Musical Express. And then there's a little German review here, which I didn't want to bother Jorg with, so I did a little Google translation. So basically he says, the second of the ex-Purple singer and his band, in which still first-class types, Ray Fenwick and John Gustafson. The group is musical, with old, hard sound remains transparent and delicate everywhere. Nevertheless, something is missing. Good songs, melodies, pacifiers. The commendable teamwork, all songs were created in collaboration, only provides hot air. So even in German, they got to make some digs. You always got to get like a little dig in there at the end. And then I found this interesting one, actually on my own, believe it or not. I thought the most interesting part about this is that they matched up the album covers with the wrong albums.
Oops.
So it says Ian Gillan, Clear Turbulence, and then shows this album called Windows, not the John Lord Windows. And then for Windows, they show the Ian Gillan Band album cover for that review. And it's from Record World, June 18th, 1977. It says Gillan left Deep Purple in 1973 when the band was at its peak, but this is only his second LP as a solo artist. The group that he has assembled includes Ray Fenwick, John Gustafson, and Mark Nossif. The unit hints at better things to come, but they must first tighten up their songs, which are still a bit lengthy. So that is true. And a lot of places kind of throw those digs in there like that, like, oh, the songs are long or whatever. But I don't know, if you're not going for radio play, which I don't think they had. I can't imagine that they were like, oh yeah, we're you're definitely going to play 7.5 minute version of Clear Turbulence on the radio. It's not going to happen. You've got very few songs that will occasionally hit that, like, you know, Hey Jude, Freebird, Hotel California, Stairway to Heaven. But for the most part, anything over 3 or 4 minutes is, unless it's one of the all-time great classics, is not going to get played.
Yeah, but really, I mean, what song offer here could you even hear on the radio?
Even in a shorter version,
maybe sitting down and be like,
Moneylender, maybe.
You know, it would be a good first single that'll really break us, Over the Hill. Like, no, Ian.
Maybe Moneylender if you shortened it, and I mean, it's got a good riff, but
I think so. Yeah, that's pretty catchy.
Would have been the closest.
Yeah.
And something we'll cover at a different time. Like, as I previously stated, there are two remixes of this: the Rockfield mixes and then the Rockfield mixes plus, which Ian Gillan was not happy with this. Ian Gillan's never happy with a mix. He wasn't happy with this mix, and basically took it back to the studio and wanted to do it again. So the interesting thing about the Rockfield mixes is the original Rockfield mixes from 97 is they completely changed up the order of the songs, and they added a seventh song, which is This Is the Way, which is only 2 minutes long. And it's kind of just a bunch of like nonsense, to be honest with you. It starts with, the album opens with Over the Hill, then goes into Clear Turbulence, 5 Moons, then opens side 2 with Moneylender, which closes a side great. I'm sure it'll open one too. Angel Machenio, This Is the Way, and ends with Good Hand Liza, which I don't think is as good an ender. It's kind of weird. I don't like when they mix up the order of songs like that. And then there's the Rockfield Mixes Plus, which goes back to the original track order and then throws on some bonus stuff, like some like live stuff, and I think they do a live version of Smoke on the Water.
All right, so in terms of the mix, what is the biggest difference between this one and, like, sound wise, Rockfield mix?
Sound wise, I think I would say that the sound is definitely better on the Rockfield mixes. Like, I feel like if you listen to it, you're like, it sounds more crisp and it sounds better. That being said, I prefer the original version, probably just because by the time the Rockfield mixes came out, I'd heard this album 150 times maybe.
Yeah.
So you're always going to kind of go with what you preferred. It also sounds like they add horns where they weren't and they take horns out where they were. Cause like I'm always, and I can't really put my finger on it, but listening to it recently, I was just like, wait, there's supposed to be horns there. And like, whoa, where are these horns coming from? You know, you just subconsciously kind of realize that.
We
There's a
started
lot
tinkering a little too much with it.
Yeah, and then there's some points where I feel like the synth work kind of comes up almost in the foreground and you lose the vocals a little bit. So overall, each song has a ton of differences to it. It's worth exploring one day on a later episode, but there's a lot of differences in the mixes. But for the casual listener who isn't familiar with this album, the Rockfield mixes plus are what's actually on Spotify, so that's what you're going to be listening to. But again, if you've only listened to this album a few times, you're probably not going to notice any of the mixing differences. And if you've never heard it before, it's not like a deal breaker, like, oh my god, it's so different. But if you're someone who is super familiar with this album like I am, you're gonna, little things will just kind of annoy you a little bit, but overall it's still just as enjoyable.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's all I got for Clear Turbulence. What an album. Glad to finally, never thought we'd see the day where we'd actually cover this one. Tons of fun listening to it again tonight as we approach midnight, and you're almost 1 a.m. over there.
Yep.
Oof.
Yes, I am.
So I do have to work tomorrow, but luckily late.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's one of the great things I was thinking of, you know, because we were talking a little bit before the show about how stressful things are in life today and everything, and you know, it's nice to sit down and, you know, just kind of isolate ourselves, go back in time, and just focus on this. And it's really a great part of the week to just kind of break down and, you know, sit there and listen to a whole album, because that's something that I don't do anymore, is listen to a whole album. Like, I'll skip around and listen to songs, playlists, because it's so easy to do, first of all. And I know that there are a lot of people that are purists, or they prefer, like, oh, I like to get the physical product, or I still buy CDs, or a lot of people, which I think is very cool, is to, you know, going back to buying vinyl and records and stuff. And that's just not really the way that I trend. These days I like to jump around and stuff. So this is really cool to sit down and, you know, almost be forced to listen to an album start to finish, because it's something I don't really do anymore. And with albums like this, which I haven't heard in a long time, and, you know, stories that you told me about how you discovered this because of me.
Yeah.
You tell me so many of these stories, and I don't even remember that whole instance. It's kind of nice to still have that. It's another way that music is just a kind of a great thing.
Yeah, and, you know, hopefully you out there listening to this are well, and hopefully this is providing you some sort of, fewer people are commuting. So I don't know in what format you're listening to this, but hopefully those of you out there are getting some sort of escapism from this the same way that we are in these crazy times. And hopefully by the time, like I said, by the time this gets out there, things are hopefully trending to the better, because as of recording this, the next month or so looks pretty bleak. So hopefully everyone out there is okay, and your loved ones are okay too.
And if everybody's been staying home and they're not commuting, they'll be listening to this on their headphones, cleaning the house, or sweeping a church. Who knows?
It'd be great if somebody listens to this while cleaning a church. We'll all come full circle.
If anybody has that experience, put it in the ratings. Put it in the comments.
If you have a church out there that needs cleaning, let me know. I'll come clean it for you while I listen to this episode to really bring it back. All right. Well, on that note, I guess we'll leave you till next week, my friend.
All right. I will talk to you soon.
All right. Bye-bye.
All right.
Thank you for listening to the Deep Purple podcast. If you like what you hear and would like more episodes in the future, please donate on Patreon to support the show. You can also give us a rating on iTunes to help new people discover the show. You can follow us on YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook for show updates. See deeppurplepodcast.com for more details. Thank you for listening.